The bridge of Defense Station Sigma 7 had never felt so crowded, yet Jextai wouldn't have moved any of his crew from their positions. Every being present was witnessing something that would be remembered in galactic history for millennia to come. Through the main viewport, space itself seemed to come alive as human vessels emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. The ships materialized in waves, each group appearing with mechanical precision exactly where Captain Martinez had predicted they would. Jextai watched in fascination as the tactical display filled with contact markers, each representing a level of firepower that had just proven itself capable of dismantling devourer fleets. 327 vessels confirmed, Ensign Torval reported, his voice filled with awe. Multiple ship classes, all unknown configurations. The human fleet was unlike anything in galactic military doctrine, where civilized species built ships for multiple roles: exploration, trade, diplomacy, and occasionally warfare. Every vessel in the human formation was clearly designed for a single purpose: combat. They moved with the coordinated precision of a predator pack, establishing defensive formations that covered every possible attack vector while maintaining clear firing lanes for mutual support. "Commander," Captain Martinez said quietly, "I'd like you to meet Admiral Catherine Stone, overall commander of the Terran Expeditionary Force." The figure that appeared on the main communication screen was an older human female, her gray hair pulled back in a severe style that somehow made her dark eyes seem even more intense. She wore the same dark blue uniform as Martinez, but with additional insignia that spoke of higher authority. "Commander Jextai," Admiral Stone said, her voice carrying the unmistakable tone of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "Captain Martinez has briefed me on your situation. Before we proceed, I want to be very clear about what you're seeing here. This fleet represents less than 8% of Earth's total military strength." The implications hit Jextai like a physical blow. If this massive force was only a small fraction of human military capability, then Earth possessed more firepower than the rest of the galaxy combined. "However," Admiral Stone continued, "we're not here as conquerors. We're here as teachers and allies. The Devourer threat requires a coordinated galactic response, and that means your people need to learn how to fight a war of extinction." "Admiral," Jextai found his voice, "we are grateful for your assistance, but our tactical doctrines have evolved over thousands of years." "Surely, with respect, Commander," the Admiral interrupted, "your tactical doctrines evolved during peacetime against civilized opponents who followed rules. The Devourers don't follow rules, and they don't want your surrender or your resources. They want you dead, your worlds stripped bare, and every trace of your civilization erased from existence." As if summoned by her words, Lieutenant Veshka called out from her station, "Commander, long-range sensors detect a massive hyperspace disturbance at the edge of the system. Multiple contacts incoming." "Devourer reinforcements," Martinez confirmed, checking her wrist device. "Looks like about 200 ships, including several supercapitals we haven't seen before." Admiral Stone's expression didn't change. "Commander Jextai, you're about to see the difference between fighting to preserve and fighting to survive. All ships, battle formation Delta, weapons free, full engagement parameters." The transformation of the human fleet was breathtaking. What had been a defensive formation shifted smoothly into something that Jextai's tactical training couldn't even classify. The ships moved like a living organism, each vessel perfectly positioned to support its neighbors while maintaining optimal firing solutions. It was less like a military formation than a natural predator preparing to strike. "Commander," Admiral Stone addressed him directly, "I want you and your crew to observe everything you're about to see. Take detailed sensor readings, record all tactical data, and prepare to analyze human combat doctrine. Consider this your first lesson. The Devourer fleet emerged from hyperspace in their traditional overwhelming formation. Over 200 ships arranged in the layered attack pattern that had proven unstoppable against every galactic defense force. Jextai had studied recordings of their tactics. They would advance in waves, using their superior numbers to overwhelm defensive positions while their adaptive technology countered any resistance. The human response was immediate and devastating. Instead of waiting for the enemy to close range, the human fleet opened fire at maximum sensor distance. The railgun projectiles, traveling at significant fractions of light speed, crossed the intervening space in seconds. The Devourers, accustomed to energy weapons that required close-range engagements, found themselves under accurate fire from distances their own weapons couldn't reach. The first wave of Devourer ships simply ceased to exist. Kinetic projectiles moving at 12% of light speed carried energy comparable to nuclear weapons. And the enemy vessels, designed to absorb and deflect energy attacks, had no defense against solid matter moving at relativistic velocities. Lesson 1, Admiral Stone announced calmly as explosions bloomed across the void. Always engage at maximum effective range. Force the enemy to fight at the distance you choose, not the distance they prefer. The surviving Devourer ships adapted quickly as they always did, spreading their formation and attempting to close the distance where their plasma weapons would be effective. It was exactly what Jextai expected them to do based on recorded encounters. The humans were ready for it. Launch fighters, Admiral Stone ordered. Jextai watched in amazement as the human carrier ships disgorged swarms of small craft. But these weren't fighters in any sense he understood. They were unmanned drones, each no larger than a shuttle but moving with impossible agility. The drones scattered across the battle space like seeds in the wind, taking positions that would allow them to attack the Devourers from every angle simultaneously. Lesson 2, the Admiral continued as the drones began their coordinated assault. Never fight fair when the survival of your species is at stake. Use every advantage you can create or steal. The Devourer fleet, caught between long-range rail gunfire from the capital ships and close-range attacks from hundreds of drones, found themselves fighting a type of engagement they had never encountered. Their adaptive algorithms, designed to counter specific threats, couldn't cope with coordinated attacks from multiple directions using completely different weapon systems and tactical approaches. Commander Chun, Admiral Stone called to one of her tactical officers. Execute Pattern 7. Yes, ma'am. All ships, Pattern 7, mark. The human fleet suddenly split into 5 separate formations, each moving in a different direction around the Devourer force. Instead of maintaining a unified front, they were surrounding the enemy, creating overlapping fields of fire that left no safe space for the surviving Devourers to regroup. Lesson 3, Admiral Stone explained as the human formations closed their trap. Mobility and coordination beat raw firepower. Make the enemy fight your battle, not theirs. Within 20 minutes of the engagement beginning, the entire Devourer reinforcement fleet had been destroyed. Not defeated, completely annihilated. Jextai stared at his tactical display in disbelief. 200 enemy ships, including super-capital vessels that had never been successfully engaged by galactic forces, had been eliminated with minimal human casualties. Admiral, he finally managed to say, your tactics are unlike anything we've ever seen. The coordination, the precision, how do you train your crews to fight like this? Admiral Stone's expression softened slightly. Commander, this is how we've fought every battle for the past 50 years. When extinction is the alternative to victory, you learn to be very, very good at winning. Over the following days, the human fleet established a defensive perimeter around the system and began the promised training program. Jextai found himself working alongside human tactical instructors who possessed a level of combat experience that was almost incomprehensible to galactic military minds. Commander Chun worked with the Caliph tactical teams, teaching them to think like predators instead of strategists. Your people excel at complex planning, he explained. But you need to learn to adapt those plans instantly when the enemy does something unexpected. Lieutenant Okafor worked with the mixed species crews, helping them understand how to coordinate their diverse abilities into unified combat effectiveness. Each species brings unique strengths, she told them, but you need to learn to think as one organism when you fight. Captain Martinez focused on weapon systems and ship design. Your technology is actually superior to ours in many areas, She admitted to Jextai during one of their sessions, but you've been using it defensively. We need to teach you to think about maximum damage output instead of minimum resource expenditure. The transformation was remarkable. Within weeks, the mixed crews of the defense station were operating with efficiency levels that exceeded their previous capabilities by orders of magnitude. More importantly, they were beginning to think differently about warfare itself. The key insight, Jextai realized during a tactical exercise, is that the Devourers aren't invincible. They're just using tactics we weren't prepared for. Exactly, Admiral Stone agreed. Every species they've encountered. The docking bay of Defense Station Sigma 7 had never hosted a vessel quite like the Defiance. Jextai watched through the observation windows as the human ship settled into the berthing cradle with mechanical precision. Up close, the vessel looked even more intimidating than it had during the battle. Its hull was a dark gray composite that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, and weapon ports dotted its surface like the eyes of some predatory beast. "Sir," Lieutenant Veshka approached with her usual efficiency, "the docking procedures are complete. The human captain has requested permission to come aboard with a small diplomatic party." "Granted," Jextai replied, though he kept his voice steady despite his curiosity. "Have them escorted to Conference Room 7, and Veshka, I want a full security detail present, but keep them discreet. These humans just saved our lives. We'll treat them as honored guests." Captain Sarah Martinez proved to be smaller than Jextai had expected. Humans, he discovered, were roughly similar in size to the Zilani but more compact, with dense bone structure and muscular development that spoke of evolution under high-gravity conditions. Her features were sharp and alert, with dark eyes that seemed to constantly evaluate her surroundings. She wore a dark blue uniform with minimal decoration, though Jextai noted the way she moved balanced, economical. Like a fighter, always ready for action. She was accompanied by two other humans, Commander James Chun, apparently her tactical officer, and Lieutenant Diana Okafor, who introduced herself as their xenobiologist and cultural liaison. "Commander Jextai," Captain Martinez said, extending her hand in what Jextai learned was a human greeting gesture. "Thank you for the hospitality. I realize our arrival was rather dramatic." "Captain Martinez, I must confess that dramatic is an understatement. In 300 years of galactic civilization, no single vessel has ever accomplished what yours did today. How is this possible?" Martinez exchanged glances with her officers before answering. "Commander, how much do you know about the Outer Rim territories? The areas beyond your current star charts?" "Very little," Jextai admitted. "The galactic community has focused on expanding inward, toward the core systems where resources are abundant and travel is safe. The Outer Rim is considered too dangerous and too empty to warrant exploration." "Well," Commander Chun spoke up, his voice carrying a slight accent, "it's not actually empty. There are thousands of inhabited worlds out there, including Earth. We've been dealing with threats like the Devourers for about 2,000 years. Jextai felt his crystalline features shift color with surprise. 2,000 years? But the Devourers only appeared 3 cycles ago. "Different swarms, same species," Lieutenant Okafor explained. "What you're facing is just one tendril of a much larger threat. The Devourers have been spreading through the galaxy for millennia, consuming everything in their path. Most Outer Rim civilizations have either been destroyed or learned to fight back." The implications hit Jextai like a physical blow. "You're saying there are more of them?" "Many more," Martinez confirmed grimly, "but also many more species who've learned to resist them. The Outer Rim isn't the empty wasteland your people think it is. It's a battlefield where dozens of civilizations have been forged by constant warfare." "And you've been fighting them for 2 millennia?" "Actually," Chun said with what Jextai was learning to recognize as a human smile, "we've been fighting them for about 50 years. The previous 1950 years, we were fighting each other." Jextai's confusion must have shown on his face because Martinez leaned forward to explain. "Commander, Earth has never known peace. Our entire history is warfare. By the time we developed space travel, we had already perfected conflict in every environment our planet could offer. Land, sea, air, urban, wilderness, Arctic, desert. We had learned to fight and win in all of them. When we finally reached the stars, Okafor continued, we found the devourers waiting for us. They thought we would be easy prey like most species they encountered. They were very wrong. Your weapons technology, Jextai said, still trying to process what he had witnessed. The projectile velocities you achieve should be impossible for a ship that size. Actually, they're quite simple, Chun replied. We use magnetic acceleration chambers that run the entire length of the ship. The projectiles are depleted uranium slugs about the size of your fist, accelerated through a series of magnetic rings powered by our fusion reactors. But the power requirements are manageable when you design the entire ship around the weapon system, Martinez interrupted. Most species design ships that happen to carry weapons. We design weapons platforms that happen to be ships. Jextai was beginning to understand something that both fascinated and terrified him. Your entire technological development has been driven by warfare. Exactly, Okafor nodded. While your civilizations focused on trade, exploration, and cultural development, we focused on survival against impossible odds. Everything we built had to work in combat conditions against enemies that wanted to kill us. But surely there must have been periods of peace in your history. The three humans exchanged looks again, and Jextai caught something that might have been amusement in their expressions. Commander, Martinez said carefully, in the year we made first contact with the Devourers, Earth was involved in 47 separate armed conflicts. We had to pause 3 wars just to deal with the alien invasion. The scale of it was almost incomprehensible to Jextai. The Caliph had fought perhaps a dozen conflicts in their entire recorded history. Most galactic species considered themselves warlike if they had experienced a few territorial disputes or resource conflicts over several millennia. How do you survive as a species if you're constantly at war? We get very good at it, Chun answered simply. War drives innovation, Commander. Every conflict teaches us something new about tactics, technology, or strategy. We don't fight because we enjoy it. We fight because it's the only way to ensure our children have a future. Speaking of which, Martinez said, consulting a device on her wrist, we need to discuss your immediate situation. That Devourer fleet we scattered? They're regrouping about 6 light years from here, and they're calling for reinforcements. How do you know this? Because we've been tracking their communications for the past hour. They use quantum entanglement for instantaneous communication across galactic distances. Very impressive technology, actually. We learned to intercept and decode their signals about 30 years ago. Jextai felt his hope beginning to fade. So they will return with a larger force? Almost certainly. But that's where things get interesting. Martinez smiled as Jextai was beginning to recognize the human expression as a precursor to something unexpected. You see, Commander, the Defiance isn't alone out here. We're just the advanced scout for a much larger force. How large? Well, Chun consulted his own device, the main fleet should be arriving in about 14 hours. 327 ships, including 12 dreadnoughts and 4 carriers loaded with fighter craft. The numbers hit Jextai like a physical blow. The entire Galactic Defense Fleet numbered less than 200 ships, and most of those were patrol vessels and escorts. A human force of over 300 warships represented military power beyond anything the galaxy had seen. But more importantly, Okafor added, we're not just here to fight the Devourers. We're here to teach your people how to fight them. Teach us? Commander, Martinez leaned back in her chair, your civilizations have incredible advantages over the Devourers. Superior technology in some areas, better organizational skills, more diverse tactical approaches. What you lack is experience in total warfare. You've never had to develop the mindset necessary to fight an enemy that wants to exterminate you completely. And you have this mindset? We've never known anything else, Chun replied. But the good news is that it can be learned. We've taught dozens of Outer Rim species how to adapt their natural advantages to this kind of conflict. Most of them are not only surviving now, they're winning. Jextai found himself leaning forward eagerly. What would this training involve? First, we help you understand how the Devourers think, Okafor began. They're not mindless destroyers, they're highly intelligent and adaptive. But their intelligence follows predictable patterns because they've never had to fight anyone who really understood warfare. Second, Martinez continued, we teach your people to think like predators instead of prey. Your tactics are defensive, designed to minimize losses and protect resources. Against the Devourers, you need to think about maximizing enemy casualties while accepting that you'll take losses in return. The third, Trun added, we help you redesign your military technology around combat effectiveness instead of elegance or efficiency. Your weapons are beautiful and precise, but they're not designed to kill as many enemies as possible as quickly as possible. Jextai considered this carefully. Everything they were describing went against thousands of years of galactic military doctrine. But then again, that doctrine had proven useless against the Devourers. How long would this training take? For basic tactical competence? About 6 months. To reach the level where your forces can operate independently against Devourer swarms? 2 to 3 years. And in the meantime? Mazal. The Caliph defense station shook violently as another plasma barrage struck its shields. Commander Jextai pressed all 4 of his hands against the tactical display, his crystalline features reflecting the angry red warnings that filled the bridge. Around him, his mixed crew of Caliph Vorthak and Zilani worked desperately to coordinate their failing defense. Shield generators at 30%, reported Lieutenant Veshka, her tentacles dancing across multiple control panels simultaneously. We cannot sustain this bombardment much longer. The enemy had appeared without warning 3 standard cycles ago. The Devourers, as the galaxy had come to call them, swept through star systems like a plague of metal locusts. Their black ships moved with terrifying coordination, consuming everything in their path. Worlds that had stood for millennia were reduced to lifeless husks within days. Jextai had commanded this station for 8 years, protecting the vital trade routes between the Inner Rim and the frontier colonies. His crew represented 5 different species, each bringing their unique strengths to the defense of civilized space. The Caliph provided tactical brilliance, the Vorthak brought engineering excellence, the Zilani offered unmatched sensor capabilities, the Hegemony contributed advanced weapons systems, and the Consortium added logistical expertise, yet none of it seemed enough against this new threat. Sir, long-range sensors detect another wave approaching, called Ensign Torval from his position at the sensor array. 47 ships, including 3 of their capital vessels? The bridge fell silent except for the constant hum of overtaxed systems. Jextai closed his primary eyes and calculated their odds. His crew had fought brilliantly, using every advantage their diverse abilities provided. They had destroyed 18 enemy vessels while losing only 3 of their own escorts. But the math was simple and cruel. The Devourers had ships to spare. They did not. Send the emergency beacon again, Jextai ordered quietly. Maximum range, all frequencies. Sir, we have been broadcasting for 2 cycles, Veshka replied gently. The nearest galactic defense fleet is 16 cycles away. Even if they received our signal immediately and departed at maximum speed. She didn't need to finish. Everyone on the bridge understood. Help would not arrive in time. The Devourers fought like nothing the galaxy had seen before. Their tactics were brutally efficient, their technology adaptive, and their hunger endless. Species that had evolved different approaches to warfare found their traditional methods useless against an enemy that seemed to learn and counter. Every strategy within hours, the Caliph prized elegant, precise strikes that maximized effectiveness while minimizing resource expenditure. The Devourers absorbed their carefully planned attacks and responded with overwhelming force. The Vorthak believed in technological superiority and defensive positions. The Devourers adapted to their weapons and overwhelmed their fortifications through sheer numbers. The Zilani relied on superior intelligence gathering and information warfare. The Devourers jammed their sensors and corrupted their data streams. Every strength the civilized species possessed became meaningless against an enemy that refused to follow the accepted rules of engagement. "Commander," Torval called out, his voice tight with strain, "I'm detecting something unusual." A single ship just dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. Shekstai's tactical display shifted to show the new contact. The vessel appeared small compared to the massive Devourer fleet, roughly frigate-sized but with an unusual configuration. Its energy signature was unlike anything in the galactic databases. "Can you identify the ship's origin?" Jekstai asked. "Negative, sir. The design is completely unknown." "But Commander—" Torval paused, checking his readings again. "They're heading directly for the Devourer fleet alone?" The bridge crew exchanged worried glances. Either this was a fool rushing toward certain death, or something they didn't understand was about to happen. "Open a communication channel," Jekstai ordered. "Unknown vessel. This is Commander Jekstai of Calith Defense Station Sigma-7. You are approaching a hostile fleet of significant size. Please adjust your course to avoid engagement." The response came immediately, spoken in accented but clear galactic standard. The voice was calm, almost conversational. "Commander Jekstai, this is Captain Sarah Martinez aboard the Earth vessel Defiance. We received your distress call. Request tactical data on enemy positions and capabilities." "Earth?" Veshka whispered, her tentacles curling in confusion. "I have no record of any species or world by that designation." Jekstai felt a flutter of hope mixed with disbelief. "Captain Martinez, we appreciate your response, but you appear to be a single vessel. The enemy force consists of over 60 ships, including capital-class vessels. I strongly recommend you withdraw to a safe distance." A sound came through the communication system that took Jekstai a moment to recognize. The human was laughing. "Commander, with respect, we didn't come this far to watch. Sending you our tactical specifications now? Might want to pull your people back to minimum safe distance." The data package arrived seconds later, and Shekstai's eyes widened as he reviewed it. The specifications made no sense. The ship's weapon systems showed power outputs that should have been impossible for a vessel that size. Its armor readings suggested materials with properties that violated known physics. Most confusing of all, the crew manifest listed only 300 beings for a ship that should have required at least twice that number. "Sir," Torval interrupted, "the unknown vessel has just accelerated to attack speed. They're moving directly into the Devourer formation." On the main screen, the small Earth ship dove toward the massive enemy fleet like a predator among prey. The Devourers responded exactly as they always did, converging on the new threat with coordinated precision. Over 30 ships adjusted course to intercept the single attacker. "Foolish," Veshka murmured. "Brave, but foolish." The first exchange of fire erupted across the void. Devourer plasma beams, weapons that had shattered the shields of entire battle groups, struck the human ship directly. Jekstai waited for the inevitable explosion. Instead, the Defiance burst through the plasma cloud completely unharmed. "Impossible," breathed Ensign Torval. The human ship's return fire was unlike anything in Jekstai's experience. Instead of energy beams or missile volleys, the Defiance launched what appeared to be solid projectiles. But these projectiles moved at significant fractions of light speed and struck with kinetic energy that dwarfed conventional weapons. The first Devourer cruiser simply vanished, torn apart by impacts that created localized space-time distortions. The second began to break up as its hull buckled under stresses it was never designed to withstand. "Captain Martinez," Jekstai called out over the communication channel, "what are those weapons?" "Railguns, Commander. We accelerate depleted uranium slugs to about 12% light speed. Physics does the rest." The casual tone in the human's voice was almost more shocking than watching Devourer ships die. The enemy vessels that had seemed invincible moments before were being destroyed with what sounded like routine efficiency. The Devourer fleet began to adapt, as it always did. Ships spread out to avoid concentrated fire, adjusted their tactics to account for the new weapons, and brought their heaviest vessels to bear on this unexpected threat. The human ship moved like nothing Jextai had ever seen. It didn't follow predictable attack patterns or maintain formation positions. Instead, it flowed through the battle space like liquid mercury, appearing where the enemy least expected and vanishing before return fire could find its mark. "Commander," Veshka called out, "I'm detecting massive energy buildup in the Devourer flagship. They're preparing their planet-killer weapon." Jextai's blood chilled. He had seen recordings of that weapon in action. The energy beam could crack a planet's crust or reduce an entire battle fleet to component atoms. No known shield could withstand it. "Captain Martinez, the enemy flagship is charging a weapon of tremendous destructive power." "You need to... Already on it, Commander." "Watch this." The human ship suddenly changed course, accelerating directly toward the flagship. Every tactical instinct Jextai possessed screamed that this was suicide. The flagship was protected by overlapping shields and surrounded by escort vessels. No single ship could penetrate those defenses. The Defiance fired a single projectile, different from the others. This one left a visible trail as it cut through space, and when it struck the flagship's shields, reality seemed to bend around the impact point. The shields simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not overloaded, they disappeared as if they had never been there. "Antimatter penetrator," Captain Martinez explained conversationally. "Creates a temporary disruption in local space-time. Very handy for getting through inconvenient barriers." The flagship, suddenly naked without its defenses, found itself face-to-face with a ship that had already proven itself capable of destroying vessels 3 times its size. The Devourer commander, showing the same tactical intelligence that had made them so dangerous, immediately began charging the planet killer for point-blank use. It was a last, desperate gambit. At this range, the weapon would destroy both ships, but it would eliminate the threat that was systematically dismantling the most powerful fleet the galaxy had ever seen. The human ship did something that made Jextai's tact